Welcome to The Real Scoop. I'm Jane Nielsen, your host and realtor at Pinnacle Residential Properties. I am here to give you the latest scoop on Wellesley real estate. This week, I am pleased to welcome Rafael Gomez and Tom Warren of the Wellesley Scholarship Foundation. Rafael is running the Boston Marathon on behalf of the foundation, and Tom is a long-standing board member. Welcome.
Thank you.
First, here are the real estate numbers. Since March 20th, 9 new homes came on the market and 10 sold. There are 91 homes remaining for sale. Buyers have been active. We expect to see the inventory rise over the next few weeks as we are in the peak of the spring market. Now on to our guests. So Tom, tell us about how you got involved with the Scholarship Foundation.
I got involved with the Scholarship Foundation about 15, 16 years ago after the death of my biology science teacher in the junior high school. Doug Sands taught more than 45,000 students in a long career here. He didn't really retire until he was about 75, but he taught biology to kids in the 8th grade, 9th grade, took interested students on field trips every weekend for many years. And among some of America's most famous field ornithologists today and international travel guides, at least 5 of his students started out with the interest that he gave them.
Oh,
so
that's
I
fantastic.
set up a fund to be matched by Wellesley residents and people who had him as students about 15 or 16 years ago.
Oh, wonderful. And Rafael, you are running the Boston Marathon to raise funds for the Scholarship Foundation. So congratulations.
Thank you.
This is your first full marathon?
First full marathon. I've done several half marathons, but this will be my first doing 26 miles.
And how's the training going?
It's going well. I mean, I got a really strong start, and then in February, March, life started happening, and business trips. I picked up the flu not too long ago.
Some bad weather.
Yeah, bad weather, right? So all these things, but that's just the way it goes. From speaking to other marathoners, you can't have a perfect training season.
Right, and we were just saying you never know what the weather will be the day you run either.
That's right. That's right. So you've got to be ready for anything.
So there was a terrific article about you and the Scholarship Foundation in the Wellesley Townsman, which we'll share the link. But I've known you for a long time. We've been friends for a long time, but I learned a lot of new things about your background and your college experience. So can you share a little bit of that?
Sure. So the article basically laid out, my motivation for running the marathon, and that's really, education. There's really 2 factors. One is the fact that I find higher education to be so important in people's lives. For me, it was truly transformational. I came in as a refugee in this country, and as I explained in the article, while many people that are born into the United States have a lot of options available to them, higher education is really the best way for an immigrant to get their foot on the ground, build some credibility, and get themselves started in life here. So that was really important to me. And the second is that, I've actually raised money before for many different charities, but this is really the first one that's local. And, I've given my money and my time to, foundations that basically are out to cure some kind of illness, but I found that this is a way to invest in the future and do so in our own town.
So, and there's obviously a tremendous need, and we hear so much about how college is getting more and more expensive. You have a freshman, I have upcoming, soon to go to college, the twins. And so Tom, tell us a little bit about the successes and what still opportunities there are to increase fundraising from our community.
Well, I think it's very important, and I draw from my own family. My parents were the first generations of their family to go to college, and my father became a surgeon. My cousin was in charge of the launch platform for the flight to the moon, the Saturn rocket. These people 120 years ago were listed as farmers in Illinois as farmer illiterate. So I know how important it is, and I know what the costs are. Even state universities are very costly today, and in many cases the tuitions rise by more than inflation. Tuitions rise by 4 or 5% almost every year, no matter what college, and inflation recently has just been at 2%. So it's very important for these kids to have these opportunities to help them with their education, because with any of the teachers like Mr. Sands or Larry Rice, who coached us in hockey and tennis, you don't know where the influence of that teacher ends. And at 75 now, I've run into people who had Mr. Sands many, many years ago. Some of them are doctors, scientists. One fellow who wasn't a very good student in my class, he became a very successful owner of a heating and air conditioning business. And one time he found Mr. Sands out in Westboro. He said, "Mr. Sands, I got lots of C's in your class, and you were a tough grader, but it set me off in the interest that I had in a life experience with my heating and air conditioning business." So you never know
That's
where the
terrific. You never know.
impact. And the costs are getting higher and higher. And when you look at the cost of many private schools now, they're in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $60,000, and even state universities are now approaching $25,000 to $30,000. And people will say, "Well, in Wellesley, it's a pretty well-off community. Why would kids really need help?" And kids all over America need help with this education. And when I make the awards for Mr. Sands and Larry Rice every year, I look out at these young kids in the audience and I say, those of us presenting today are the older generation, but you are the future of America. So the gifts and the awards to these kids are really preparing for our future.
And I know the foundation's been around since the 50s.
It goes back to the 50s when Mr. Babson made what then was a very generous donation to be matched by Wellesley residents, and it has grown over the years to where it's now in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 million with his first very generous donation.
Oh, that's terrific. And I know tell us about the unmet need. I know last year you said there was significant.
Yes, last year I looked at the figures last night, and despite the awards that kids get from a variety of different organizations, including the Wellesley Scholarship Foundation, the unmet need for Wellesley students was about $770,000.
Wow. And the other great thing about the Scholarship Foundation is it is a nonprofit, and it seems like almost 100% go directly to the students' aid, not to overhead.
It does. There is almost no overhead. The people on the board are all volunteers. There's a very active committee that reviews every single application. These are all volunteers. So I would assume that the cost, and I've seen a lot of them, I've been a treasurer of different organizations, so the cost of the Wellesley Scholarship Foundation would be among the lowest of any nonprofit in Massachusetts.
So, and obviously the primary, it's need-based, so there's different scholarships that children, or kids can apply for.
Kids can apply for them. Many of them are named for teachers. Many of them are named for people who went through the Wellesley public school system. Some of the people have passed away now, so it's in honor of people who grew up in the town, made a contribution to the town, and wanted to be remembered with a scholarship.
So those are named scholarships for, that's terrific. And I think it's fantastic that you have such warm thoughts about such a teacher that you had 60 years ago.
I have great memories of both Doug Sands, and I still guide the bird walks for Broadmoor down the road and owl prowls. I guide them in Canada and the Western United States. And then the other person I helped with a scholarship was Larry Rice, who coached kids in hockey and tennis here for some 60 or 70 years up in the Cliff Road, Rockridge Pond area. Kids from my generation, there was no youth hockey at that time, but kids from my generation were captains at Dartmouth, Harvard, Brown, St. Lawrence, just on a little pond, and Mr. Rice used to scrape the pond off whenever it snowed while we were in school. This was mostly in elementary school from, say, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So kids who had either Mr. Sands or Larry Rice, in some cases kids had both, would remember these people fondly.
So if someone wanted to make a donation, there's a couple of different opportunities. Certainly you have done great with your goal. You've set a financial goal and you have a website, Raphael.
Yep.
So I think you said you're almost 70% to your goal.
Yep.
And then there's a bonus if you donate to Raphael, which Tom, you might not even know about this, but tell us about the party you're having.
Oh, yeah. So those that donate minimum $50 will be invited to a party at my house where we'll be, since I'm Cuban background, I'm going to be cooking up some Cuban food. We'll be having Cuban music, of course, and I'll even have some pastries brought in from Miami. My sister's going to be visiting.
Oh, terrific.
And we might even do a little salsa dancing.
Salsa dancing,
Yeah,
yes.
I know that you're looking forward to that.
Oh, yes. And I've had Raphael's Cuban food, and I highly recommend it. And so, Tom, if someone wanted to establish a scholarship, would you recommend they start out at the website?
I recommend that people investigate the website and would start there, and then they will be put in touch with people who would explain exactly how they could set that up.
Okay. If you'd like to support Raphael on behalf of the Wellesley Scholarship Foundation and the Boston Marathon, follow this link on the screen. Thanks for joining us at The Real Scoop. If you have a suggestion about a future guest or a Wellesley event you'd like to promote, please give me a call at 781-223-7338 or visit my website at janenielsen.com. And remember, if you are considering listing your home for sale, now is the time to contact me to find out when the best time is to list and what you need to do to prepare.